So with that, I would like to move us into our conversation when we're building on the experiences in childhood and young adulthood into the experiences of individuals as adults. And so, like our first session, we have a great panel lined up for you to share their stories and their experiences. So we have Michelle, Lainie, Estela, Bernadette, and Lorenzo. So, Michelle, let's get us started.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Michelle Jose on Staten Island. When I was born, I was diagnosed as having a floppy baby, and I didn't get my developmental milestones on time. Doctors ran the nerve conduction test on me when I was 2 years old and decided that I had non-specific myopathy. They prescribed a walker and orthopedic shoes. At age 10, I suddenly developed scoliosis, and it progressed so rapidly that I was quickly referred to a surgeon. The surgeon wanted a more definitive diagnosis. They took you without reading. As he told it, why should I bother operating if she's only going to die in a few years? So I was sent to a neurologist who did a nerve biopsy and diagnosed me at age 12 with what they called daydream sodas. By way of patient education, I was given a Xerox about it, and I was told that I might experience breathing problems someday. But if that happens, just go to the hospital and get some oxygen, I was told. They didn't know it back then that was the worst advice they could have given me. About 6 years later, when I was starting at Barnard College, I did develop breathing problems that I didn't know to look for the subtle symptoms of weakened breathing muscles and carbon dioxide retention. So when I began blacking out during my classes, I checked myself into the hospital, and I got some oxygen as ordered. 3 days later, I was having a seizure. I was suffocating from the carbon dioxide in my bloodstream, even though I was on oxygen the entire time. So they resuscitated me. And they did an emergency intubation without sedation, and the ventilator allowed me to blow off the excess CO2. But by then, my phrenic nerve had deteriorated to the point where I could no longer breathe on my own. And while I was unconscious in the ICU, the nerves in my arms also deteriorated a great deal. So I was in the hospital for 5 months. I was depressed and I was suicidal. I was unable to speak because of the type of treatment that they could use. And I was fortunate enough to be transferred to a rehab hospital where they better understood the pulmonary complications of neuromuscular diseases. But when I was finally released, my insurance company raised our premiums 3 times the size of our mortgage. We nearly lost our house. So I taught myself web design and programming so that I could build an online web forum, and I was looking for others with the same diagnosis. And eventually we found each other. And then we found we were now considered to have the rare type of Charcot-Marie-Tooth. Then all the research and the fundraising seemed to be for the milder ones, the CMT 1A. And we wondered when the researchers would ever get to us. It's a terrifying thing to get a rare disease that the doctors don't understand and realize none of the research is really going to apply to you. So I wanted to understand my own disease. I started taking online classes in genetics, and that illuminated so much for me that I decided to go back to school to finish the degree that got derailed. It took a few years of wrangling with vocational rehabilitation. That 3 weeks ago, I started classes at Columbia University with the goal of being either a genetic counselor or a genetic researcher. I've never done the type 2 wonder. Why me? Why me is easy. I know that I got a duplication of exon 4, a TNT 22, and I got the point mutation in my death. The real question is, how does the protein work? And together I hope we'll find out. CMT, we've got this.
Hi, my name is Lainie Ishbia, and I'm 48 years old and from Michigan, and I have type 1A CMT. For the first 2 decades of my life, I rarely, if ever, talked or even thought about having Charcot-Marie-Tooth disorder. It was just this weird-sounding disease. I had the bad luck of inheriting from my mom, and the reason for my fear of relay races and embarrassing low scores on those awful required presidential fitness tests in elementary school. I didn't think or talk about Charcot-Marie-Tooth in middle school either, which is when I first started hating my body and comparing it to others. Nor did I think about it during or after the 3 months spent recovering from the triple orthodesis surgery I had to have on both my feet the summer before my freshman year of high school. A surgery that involved pins being permanently placed inside each foot plate to fuse the bones together and prevent them from overpronating and breaking. During that recovery, and for many years after, I made up stories and lies about having CMT. When people asked what had happened to my feet or why I was walking funny, I would say I was in a ski accident or a trampoline jumping incident. My lies always involved activities I wished I was able to do. I experienced serious anxiety and eventual depression during those high school years. I was constantly worried about everything from having to climb the bleachers to someday needing leg braces to walk, which of course I eventually needed. It was lonely and scary to be a teenager with CMT, and I became depressed. Even though I saw several therapists at the time, CMT was not thought of as a contributing factor to my teenage angst. I was an expert at keeping CMT and its effects hidden from everyone, especially from myself. At age 16, I cried out for help by swallowing a bunch of sleeping pills that I had found in my dad's medicine cabinet. I didn't want to die, I wanted to be seen. I felt as invisible as the invisible physical challenges that I kept hidden. My mom, who had CMT, did the best she could. She did not live her life defined by her disabilities, even when she could barely get out of a chair or pull up her own pants. She would say, "It could be worse," and downplay both the emotional and physical impact CMT had on her day-to-day life. But of course, I and everyone else could see her unspoken struggles. After many years of counseling, I learned coping tools for dealing with the fear and uncertainty that CMT brings. Worries like, will I ever need a wheelchair? And what if my hands get like my mom's? How will I remain independent? In my late 20s, when the scrapes and bruises from falling down on sidewalks became an everyday thing, I was in a much better place to accept my need for leg braces. When buttoning shirts and opening clasps on my necklaces became harder, I found adaptations. My daughter Zoe, who's here with me this weekend, also has CMT 1A. Unlike my childhood, we talk openly about living with CMT, and she even wrote one of her college application essays about the challenges of being a teenager with invisible physical disabilities. I was always told that CMT is not a fatal disease, and yet my mom just died in January from flu-related complications due to extreme pulmonary weakness caused by CMT. I'm here with you today because of my beautiful, strong, and amazing daughter, Zoe. I would, of course, love for there to be a treatment or a cure for CMT in my lifetime, but I will do everything I can to help ensure there's a cure for CMT in hers. Please support our efforts so CMT doesn't take anyone else's mom or grandma away. Thank you for listening.
Good morning, and thank you for this opportunity to speak with you all today. My name is Estela Lugo, and I am 38 years young. My sister Melissa and I were both diagnosed with Charcot-Marie-Tooth type 2 before the age of 4. My frequent falls, trips, and floppy gait sparked early concern in my parents, Miguel and Anita. Luckily, their questions were soon answered after painful nerve conduction testing at LIJ in New York. No one in my family had ever heard of CMT, and there was no family history to be found. By the time my parents had a name for this disease, they had also just picked out a name for my newborn sister. And like a cruel deja vu, they relived the heartbreak 2 years later when my sister started showing the same dropped feet as me. Because we were both diagnosed so young, we have very little memory of life before CMT. It is woven into who we are, from the smallest details all the way into our life's biggest decisions. CMT is the imaginary friend that no one ever wants. Although it may seem absent to many on the outside, it is a constant and uninvited guest, showing up at the most inconvenient times. It will pull you out of dance class because you can no longer stand on your tippy toes and proceed to kick you off the softball team when you can no longer run or close your mitt around a fly ball. It will stand outside your junior high school just so it can trip you down a flight of stairs. And then sit right at your hospital bedside while your surgeon is pulling 6-inch steel pins from your fused ankles. It will laugh along with the school bully as he does impersonations of your awkward gait, and then tell you to walk right past the kick line tryouts and onto your bus back home. It will grease the classroom doorknobs, making them impossible to turn open, and then cross off fashion design from your career wish list, because sewing and CMT do not get along. It will glue debit cards into ATM machines and numb your feet with ice as you sleep. And when you've arrived home safely with your newborn daughter, it will take away half the strength in your arms for the first few weeks of her life and hand her off to others when you're just too weak to hold her. It will let her hair run wild because closing hair clips and pulling on rubber bands feel more like battles than motherhood. It will force you to sit down when all you want to do is stand up and play catch with your son, and then let you miss the look on his face when he skis for the first time. It will cancel plans with friends because the bruises from your leg braces have not yet healed, and then let your phone calls go to voicemail because today your voice just feels too fatigued to catch up. It will get you into heated arguments with strangers in parking lots because you do not fit their visual criteria for a handicapped parking spot, and force you to watch from your front window as your children make snowmen in the front yard because cold weather and atrophy equal pain. It will turn first dates into research projects just so you can ensure that that awesome rooftop restaurant also comes with an elevator. It will do all of these things while remaining unnoticed by those around you. And then it will have the audacity to ask you to smile through it all. And so we do. We smile through the pain, the frustration, the disappointment. We carve career paths around the roadblocks, and we raise children with messy hair but big hearts. We share our stories with you today, not for anyone to feel sorry for us, but to raise the urgent awareness needed for CMT treatments and research. I have fallen 53 times so far this year alone, but I have gotten up 54. To my fellow CMT community, keep going. Keep supporting each other and speaking up. You have the power to impact this world for the better. To the FDA, thank you for listening. May today's insight translate into oversight for tomorrow's treatments. We call on you to improve policies, research, therapies, and the support these families deserve. Thank you.
Good morning. It's an honor to be here today in front of you all. My name is Bernadette Scarduzio, and I am 39 years old and reside in Drexel Hill, PA. I was born with Charcot-Marie-Tooth disorder type 1A. It was passed on from my late father, John, to me and my older brother. Living with this rare disease, I was always in pain as a child, especially in my hips. I was clumsy and would frequently complain about walking far distances. I was tired and fatigued every day. I quickly discovered most people never even heard of CMT, especially before the internet, so it was very uncomfortable to talk about growing up. I barely knew exactly what CMT was, let alone try to explain it to my peers. Some kids even thought I was faking the pain. I even felt feelings of anger, isolation, fear, and anxiety, and this completely affected my school experience and friendships. Although I had many friends and many who stuck up for me, I did get teased and made fun of throughout my school years, which took a toll on my confidence and self-esteem. GIMP was one nickname engraved in my mind. I had depression and sometimes took my anger and frustrations out on the ones I loved the most. And I often isolated myself from my family and my friends. I lived in fear as a child from the thought of having surgery that my parents waited until I was 16 years old to have a much-needed hip surgery for my hip dysplasia. It used to keep me up at night thinking that one day I needed to get this big surgery. The pain was so unbearable in my hips, I remember thinking, if I don't get this done soon, I don't know how much longer I can bear this pain. I had thoughts of suicide and had to seek counseling in high school. CMT has had a huge impact on my life since I can remember. Before I did anything with friends, I had to do my leg exercises and all my stretches. It was like a chore. I just wanted to be with my friends and keep up, but I never could. Working out was something I always loved, and I remember when gripping the weights, it was hard for me, and I was often started to lose my balance. I loved it, but I still never got as strong as I wanted. I also discovered with researching CMT that it can affect the way we hear, especially in loud environments. That explains why I always had to say what. I could never understand what others were saying unless I read their lips and listened as hard as I possibly could. Watching TV, people would ask me if I'm deaf, and frankly, sometimes it feels like it. 28 operations under my belt due to CMT. Dozens of physical therapists and occupational therapists worked with me throughout the years, and some still do, and have all been a part of my growing up. I hated seeing my father in pain all the time. He was a master hairstylist and owner of our family salon and was robbed in his 40s when not being able to cut hair anymore. CMT for my family was referred to as the family secret. No one wanted to accept life with a rare, chronic, progressive disease. I knew that one day CMT would start affecting my hands and the ability to work normal and function properly. My fine motor skills are completely gone now. I experience pain, especially in the bitter cold or in the hot heat. Bone deformity and ligament tightness has caused my hands to start feeling like my feet. I have bone deformity and atrophy in both my legs and my hands. Due to poor circulation, pain in my toes, and ugly-looking nails, I had my toenails removed during one of my ligament transfer surgeries. What worries me the most about the future living with CMT is the ability to continue to take care of myself and be independent. I hope to one day be able to walk again and run and utilize my body the way that I used to be. Thank you for hearing my story.
Good morning. Thank you for being here to hear my story. I am the face of CMT. My name is Dr. Lorenzo Woodson. I grew up in Philadelphia. I'm 54 years old. I grew up in the foster care system, so I found out about CMT about the age of 5, living in foster care. CMT has impacted my life in a slow, progressive manner. I first began noticing physical signs and symptoms as a child, about 5, during play. I realized running and keeping up with my peers was difficult. Swimming was one of the many activities that I did well, and it gave me some leverage and self-confidence over my peers. Later in teen years, cycling provided me with some stamina and strength against gradual weakness of certain peripheral muscles, like my calves, ankles, hands, wrists, and forearms. As I reached my 30s and 40s, I began noticing increased weakness in my wrists, hands, ankles, and feet. I used to be able to lift with one hand, 30, 35 pounds with one hand. Now that is very difficult. Standing in line for public activities, concerts, or sports events has become frustrating and physical strain, along with running, which is very difficult now that I have to wear ankle braces. The braces have improved my quality of life by reducing the number of embarrassing episodes of falling and tripping. While I have completed great levels of academic excellence and continue to practice scholarship, CMT has slowed my ability to type and to get professional work done in an expedient manner. In addition, getting dressed, buttoning down my shirts, tying my shoes, clipping my fingernails, putting cream in my hair, zipping up my pants and jackets have become a daunting task. The other thing CMT has impacted is, and that is aggravating, are when I'm eating foods like hot wings. I love hot wings. It's very difficult to eat them when your pinching motion from your finger to your index finger is very weak. It's very embarrassing as well. Because fine motor strength is deteriorating, it is difficult to hold the wings with the thumb and index finger. As the CMT condition progresses, fatigue and weakness continue to be a major concern. Walking long distances, climbing stairs, transporting groceries from the car into the house are major tasks, along with carrying out daily life skills. Although I struggle with these limitations. I'm concerned for my physical abilities as I age, like opening jars and these complicated and complicated packages. CMT has definitely affected my mental health in a small way, particularly my self-image and physical confidence. As a young man, I always took pride in my self-image because I grew up in foster care, not having much or the best of anything. I did not have much to feel good about myself. As a child, knowing that I was limited in what I could do and could not do because of the CMT, I stayed to myself. Over the years, I have exercised and tried to eat right and find innovative ways to cope with the CMT's physical limitations. For example, I discovered that a slim piece of string could be used to make zippers more effective when attached to my pants and jackets. The string idea was done because of too many near close bathroom accidents because the pinching motion in my hands made it difficult to grab the zippers. These challenges, although time-consuming on a daily basis, have not altered my attitude. In fact, I have become determined to not let CMT condition give me a negative self-concept. CMT does put limits on my physical abilities, but it will not limit my self-confidence and the building of positive social relationships. I learn to accentuate the social skills and how to build meaningful relationships because having CMT, I realize we need help from other people. It is my hope that in my lifetime or in the lifetime of others, that a cure will be found for this troubling condition, so I am and others could have a more physical quality of life.
So join me in thanking this entire panel for digging deep and sharing these experiences. So now again, we are going to broaden the dialogue to conclude all of you in the room and those that are following along on the webcast with our next series of polling questions. So as you know, we are now talking about the voice of the adult CMT and inherited neuropathy patient. And so that's the stakeholder group that we would like input from the audience on regarding these polling questions. So we ask that only the adults and caregivers of adult patients in the audience here in the room and online answer these questions. So if we can go to our first session 2 polling question. So the question here is, what symptoms of your CMT or other inherited neuropathy most impact your daily life? Please select up to 3. Your options are A, balance and ability to stand, B, mobility issues, C, coordination with hands and arms, D, fatigue, E, orthopedic deformities, F, respiratory, vocal, choking, and or swallowing issues, G, sensory loss such as vision and hearing, H, pain, and I, none of these symptoms. So please choose the top 3 that have had the most impact on your daily quality of life as an adult patient with CMT or other inherited neuropathy. All right, I'll give you a few more moments to get your responses in. You're ranking the top 3 of these symptoms that have the greatest impact on your daily quality of life. While those final results are trickling in, as of right now, it looks like the thing highest rated as most impacting daily life is mobility issues, followed closely by balance and the ability to stand. A third would be coordination with hands and arms, followed by fatigue and pain. There are individuals that rated orthopedic deformities and respiratory, vocal, choking, and swallowing as being in some of the most impactful symptoms of their disease, and nobody rated that none of these were the most impactful symptoms. We go to our next question. So this question is, what specific aspects of daily life are most challenging because of your CMT or inherited neuropathy? And here you can select all that apply. And so the options are A, working or going to school, B, exercising, C, using your hands, such as handwriting, typing, cutting food, handling utensils, D, driving, E, hobbies, which can include things like gardening, sewing, painting, or sports, F, caring for yourself, such as bathing, dressing, or hairstyling, G, communicating, such as vocal strength or respiratory weakness, H, some other aspect of your daily life that is most challenging because of your disease, or I, no aspects of your daily life are challenging. Please select all that apply. Just give you a few more moments to work through this list of all the different specific daily impacts or daily aspects of life that are most challenging because of your disease. As it stands, it looks like exercising and hobbies are most impacted, followed by activities that involve using your hands and working or going to school. Looks like about the next tier, maybe the third tier, would be caring for yourself and driving, followed by communicating or some other things that were not listed. Please do chime in during the audience discussion to let us know what else is most impacted in your daily life. And it looks like there's at least one person who said that there are no aspects of daily life that are challenged because of their CMT. Okay, so if we can move to the next question. So this is a question about, the question is, do you feel that you have any of these mental health concerns today? And please check all that apply. And your options are A, little interest or pleasure in doing things, B, feeling down, depressed, or hopeless, C, thoughts that you would be better off dead or hurting yourself, D, feeling nervous or anxious or on edge, E, bothered by not being able to stop or control your worrying, F, suddenly feeling fear or panic, G, being intimate with a spouse or partner, H, interacting socially, such as with friends or family, I, some other mental health concern, or J, you do not have any mental health concerns. So please select all that apply to you. I'll give you a few more moments. All right, as results are trickling in, it looks like as of now, the that mental health concern, which most people report, is that of feeling nervous and anxious and on edge, followed by feeling down, depressed, or hopeless, and closely after that, interacting socially and with friends. There are a fair amount of responses for each of the other mental health concerns, including some others that weren't listed, which I, of course, again, will encourage you to share with us during the audience discussion. And there are a number of you that also report not having these mental health concerns. Okay. Can we move to the next? Oh, so now we're going to actually move to the audience discussion. Just double checking that mic and make sure I can move around the room and call on you, and we can continue the discussion that we were having this morning, where we were really hearing a lot about the slow progression during childhood But now, as we heard from the panel, we heard from your polling questions that there's certainly continued progression into adulthood and a lot of impacts on daily life. So for, again, I'll be asking questions, reminders just to raise your hand, wait to be called on. Please state your name, and if you're comfortable, your CMT or inherited neuropathy type. For this session, I want to work through some of the major categories of symptoms that we heard about. And what I want to do is I want to hear from those of you that view a particular symptom or health impact as being one of those most burdensome. So top 3, I think, is what we asked you to rank. And what I want to hear is a story or an example that demonstrates why that is one of the most impactful aspects of the disease on your life. And that could be some activity that you can't do or do as fully that's important to you. That could be because it has some other impact on you socially, emotionally, psychologically. Whatever it might be is the reason that you chose it is what we want to hear. And so I actually want to start with some of the less prevalent ones. And so if there's anyone that had sensory loss, hearing or vision loss, that they view as being one of the most burdensome aspects of their CMT or inherited neuropathy, would you be willing to raise your hand and share? If you have those experiences, please submit them, and you're on the web, to the email, so that way our webcast moderator can share those as well. Yes, we have a hand here in the back.
Hi everyone. My name is Richie, and I'm with my wife. We traveled a few thousand kilometers from here. We are from the Philippines actually. Yeah, so we would like to thank the organizers for bringing this up, because, and of course, we would like to take the opportunity to be heard as well. And when I heard about the FDA coming here, I told my wife, hey, it's our time, okay? And I told my son, my son Terrence, actually, unfortunately he cannot join because he has a school. So I told my son that I promise you I'll bring something when we come back from the US, right? And it's our first time here, actually. It's a very nice country. My son, actually, before I go to the symptoms, my son was diagnosed when he was 4 years old. But he's now 21, and it's only like 2 years back that he was diagnosed in terms of the gene. And the doctors actually doesn't know about CMT. And when he was 4 years old, we were told that, your son must have a CMT. And right into our faces, we were told that he might die. that tragic. Straight to our faces, he may not grow old. He may not reach the age of like 10 years old. And And I said, why? For now, there's no cure, and that's it. Period. And what we did is that just to keep on praying. And since he told us that there is no medicines or cure, what we can do is just to feed him vitamins. We are in a third world country. Even the neurologist doesn't know what the disease is, right? And just very recently, 1 to 2 years back, he started to lose his vision. He had scotoma, the one that when you look into a person, there's something black in his eyes, and it came up like he had an accident, a minor accident when he was driving, and my son doesn't really complain much. No, we raised our son with right perspective attitude, in a sense that when he stumbles, he always think like, it's good that I just stumbled, I did not die, right? So it keeps like that, So we trained our son to be like that. by the way, we have two kids. So, and my son, who's the oldest, and the other one is a 17-year-old girl. And it keeps on asking us, Dad, why do I have this? Do you have a relative or somebody from your family have this? And I said, no. How about Mom? Nah. So why did God bring this to me? Did we do something? Did you guys do something that that he would give this us to this is to me? And I said, no, I cannot answer that. No. Just hold on to our faith, keep praying, and probably God will use other people to get to the cure. Thus, we are looking up to these guys. Believe it or not, the FDA, if it doesn't gets approved by the US FDA, it doesn't go anywhere in the world. When in the Philippines, even the drug like Idebenon, I'm sorry if I mentioned that drug, Idebenon. When he suffered that scotoma in his eyes, we don't have Idebenon in the Philippines. I'm taking that medicine all the way from UK, and I'm spending like $2,000 every 3 months. I got the gene test for $10,000. $10,000 just to get tested. So yeah, and even the anecdotal, I keep reading on the internet, and believe it or not, I don't have resources, but just internet now, because I found the doctors to have no knowledge in the Philippines of the disease. So I have to push myself to believe on the anecdotal, relief that it can bring, like supplements, from the resveratrol to the CoQ10, etc. Because we have nothing.
Well, Richie, thank you so much. And thank you for traveling all of this way to be here.
And guys, I just want to tell you that, we are really so much dependent on you guys and the doctors, the CRISPR that I'm actually looking at as well. And I hope one day, probably in 2 years or 3 years' time, keeping my fingers crossed, that we'll have the cure.
Yeah.
So we can end all this. Thank you so much.
And it's not just these guys. There's a lot of industry in the room that are helping do this, researchers, and not only that, but you're being here today and sharing your experience, and everyone else. That is all moving the field forward. So thank you.
I'm just going to jump in again with sensory and vision loss. So Zach my son talked about him just a couple of minutes ago. So at age 4 years old is when we first figured out that he had a type of vision loss. And so I can totally understand what you're saying, because I heard everything like, did you do drugs when you were pregnant? We have no idea what's going on with him. We had seen countless neurologists, and then finally we discovered when someone looked into his eyes, because usually little kids, they don't look in their eyes and give them eye exams, that we noticed the paling or the narrowing of the optic nerve. And it wasn't till many years later, when he finally got diagnosed for the CMT6, that the two kind of came together. Well, it is a nerve, so it kind of makes sense. But even at that point, there's actually 3 different types of CMT6, so it doesn't make it even more complicated. When I had talked to Allison Moore, she was my first person I reached out to, because with a disease like this, you have no idea where to go. And there's no family history of it, so it was pretty much like a bombshell. And when I told her that there was a visual component, she's like, visual component? Wow, he has type 1A with a visual component. Hence, he was then re-diagnosed with CMT6. But I had actually found a family down in Tennessee, and it was a dominant gene, where ours is the recessive for Zach. And that whole family has over 50 family members that are all legally blind with CMT6, but it's a different version of it. So the sensory piece of it is very important. Thank you for bringing that up, because we hear so much of the CMT 1As and so on and so forth, and that visual component also is very important. So thank you.
Exactly. So if there's others that want to share how that visual component has impacted their lives, or hearing loss, I'd be very interested in that. We'll also expand it now to also include those that have vocal cord strain and weakness, difficulty with swallowing, and breathing difficulties. I know we kind of grouped that together. So for those of you that view that as one of the most burdensome aspects of your condition, I would love to hear about that and some experiences. So we have a hand here, and then we'll come there third.
Hi, I'm a
Here first.
caregiver again, as most of you probably know. My husband has CMT1A. Also, very rarely, he has diaphragm paralysis and is hugely impacted respiratory. That was a game changer for us, really. It came on later after we were married. CMT is hard to deal with. I think the respiratory part of it brings it to another level. It becomes a fatal disease. He was hospitalized for respiratory failure. His CO2 levels were up to 75. That's pre-organ failure. And we had a doctor that had prescribed him oxygen, which is not, so again, we have doctors that don't know what they're doing. And we have now, CMT is now a fatal disease for some people. He sleeps with a non-invasive ventilator every night. If he doesn't get enough sleep, his CO2 levels are up and he can't function. He can't go to work. And he's our primary, as you saw on the video, he goes to work, right? I take care of. So the respiratory it was a game changer for us. The physical symptoms, difficult to manage. The fatigue, he was super impacted severely, aside from respiratory, but that was a game changer for our family, and that's really scary.
Yeah, thank you. You come right here.
I have a question. For the various types that impact vision, is it common that it's the retina or the optic nerve? Does anyone know? I know with giant axonal neuropathy, it causes blindness, and for us, it's the optic nerve. But we do have a rat model that is showing a retinal phenotype, and at first, it had an albino background, but they've bred that out, and so now we're eager to get some late stage patients evaluated. It's very difficult for them to travel to see if retinal defect is more a late stage defect that just hasn't been characterized yet. But I'm just curious for those impacted with vision problems, if it's the retina or the optic nerve. Does anyone have any feedback?
Yeah. So as people are sharing, if you want to add that into your statements,
Yours is
please
optic.
feel to.
Okay. His son is optic.
Okay.
Yeah,
Great.
Zach is optic as well.
Okay.
You know, and here's just a thought. It might be a little out of context, but it's in my mind, so I want to share it. As was mentioned when this meeting was kicked off this morning, the first gene therapy, and it's in AAV, a viral vector-mediated gene therapy, was approved by the FDA last year. So they use a benign viral vector that serves as a delivery truck, and there's a zip code on it. And those viral particles go to the cells they're targeted to go to, like a FedEx truck, and deliver its cargo. It basically, the virus attacks those cells and infects it with a healthy copy of the gene that in theory will have lifelong expression of the missing protein. So while the forms of inherited neuropathy or CMT that impact vision are ultra rare alone, if they were to come together to fund an AAV-mediated gene therapy approach for those whose causal gene defect, if it's a recessive
So,
disorder
Lori,
that's small enough to fit in, we could come together and help fund some research that could have implications to a few of the forms that have vision implications.
So I just want to make sure that we're fully utilizing the time to hear about people's experiences and impacts. So, Diana?
Hi, my name's Diana, and I have CMT 1A. I was diagnosed when I was around 3 years old. It's very prominent in my family. And I guess I'm going to try to read a little bit here. I was never able to run, jump, hop, skip, any of those things from the time I was a child. I had dreams of being able to run, and it was really awesome, but it never occurred. I've already had, by the age of 17, I'd had 6 major surgeries on my feet, requiring me to be in crutches or in a wheelchair for most of my adolescence. As a mother, though, I have watched my son go through those same 6 surgeries, go through the same thing I had to, and I have to tell you that the pain, I felt as a mother was far worse than anything I've ever experienced in my life. I gave him life, but I also gave him so many challenges that his peers will never understand. Thank you. Or deal with. Okay, on to the next story part. In 1990, my mom's CMT became worse. She was the first one in our family to have CMT. Hers progressed to the point that she was bedbound. So we created a bed in a room in the living room. And she then started to have respiratory problems. At the time, we weren't aware of any respiratory component of CMT. So her physicians tried to assist her by putting her on CPAP, giving her inhalers, and oxygen. I know now that 2 of the 3 caused her breathing problem to increase and worsen. So, to go on a little bit more, I am a registered nurse. I worked at that time 13 hours in a pediatric ICU or a neonatal ICU. After working, I would go home to my parents' house with my husband and my 18-month-old son in tow. We lived about 35 miles north, so we would live there for 3 to 4 days a week, and that was so that we could provide her home care, and I gave her her medical components as prescribed by the physician that involved everything from Foley's to IVs to drawing blood. And I'm really thankful we were able to do that. But on, June 28th, 1992, was a typical day. I'd gotten home from work after 13 or so hours. We visited, we talked, we chatted, we did our medical requirements. And then about 11 o'clock, my son, my husband, and myself all stuffed ourselves into that little spare bedroom and went to sleep. I got up once during the night and noticed that she was breathing very abdominally and deeply. And I knew as a nurse that that could be a problem, but I said in my own mind that it was probably best that she sleep. She needed the sleep. The next morning I got up, threw my scrubs on, ran out there to say, "Hey, Mom," because she always got up in the morning to see me. She was slumped over. Excuse me. It's okay. She was slumped over, not moving. She had died from respiratory arrest at age 63, and it didn't need to happen. It just didn't need to happen. So, as I said, we weren't aware of any CMT component. Unfortunately, we are aware now because my older sister and myself both have paralyzed diaphragms. My sister's is worse, as she's 6 years older. So because of, it's okay, Marv. Because of that, we've had to actively go to doctors and try to interact and get the right prescription. And I have to tell you, with my history in medical, I know to ask more questions. I know to ask for what I want. And I know that I don't have to accept every answer that the physician may give me. I don't think that they're bad physicians. I think they're uninformed physicians. So when they gave my sister CPAP, oxygen, again, I said, no. We're repeating the same thing 30 years later. What is wrong with these people? I literally had to go in with her and make myself a little bit of a pest. I don't know. And at that point, we were able to get her directed to the right people with the right information. And she is currently now on BiPAP with no oxygen. But again, it needs to be a specialist that understands. It can't just be a regular physician. You need to go to a special center of excellence that works with pulmonary problems. And I think the other thing I wanted to mention, I'm sorry if I'm speaking so long, but was that we have to speak for ourselves and we have to speak for our children. We can't just blindly accept anything. There are, as I said, I'm in the medical field, or was, and my husband still is. There are so many physicians that have no knowledge, and they look it up, and what do they find? The first things that come up is it affects the peripheral muscles. It says nothing about respiratory. I've actually done a lot of research, and I found that since 1988, 4 years before my mother died, to present day, there's been many research studies that show that CMT has autonomic neuropathy associated with it. What does that mean? Autonomic is the muscles in our bodies that affect things that we don't have to think about. Breathing, swallowing, smooth muscles and glands. These are all being affected by CMT. And not just one flavor of CMT, but many of the different CMTs. So
any final thoughts, Diana?
Okay, I'm sorry. So what I would like to see is that we more accurately diagnose patients with autonomic neuropathy and develop accurate and effective treatment modalities for these patients. With these two simple steps, life would be so much better for all CMT patients and provide better quality of life. Sorry, I kept getting emotional. I'm back. It's all good.
No apology needed. So we have a comment right here.
Hello, I'm Anna. I have CMT2C. And what I dislike most about it is having breathing problems and having scoliosis. And these two influence each other. When I was a teenager, I got a severe scoliosis, and it's still getting worse every year. Some of my breathing muscles are paralyzed. And I have a son, he's 6 years old, and he has CMT2C as well. And we did lots of physical therapy because I really didn't want him to get scoliosis too. And a few weeks ago, we did an X-ray, and you could see the first signs of scoliosis. And I'm scared he will get breathing problems too. So I'm here to ask, let us please find a cure for these scoliosis and breathing problems.
Yeah. So Anna, can you help me understand the impact that that combination of scoliosis and breathing problems has had on your daily life, an example, or if you want to describe it some other way.
For example, when I go by wheelchair, I couldn't have a conversation at the same time because I'm searching for air.
Okay, thank you very much. So we've been talking a lot about some of the less prevalent symptoms, some of the sensory loss, breathing-related issues. I want to now expand it even further to include, we heard about a number of different issues related to hands and hand involvement. So if that's one of your top symptoms, most burdensome symptoms on your daily life, I'd love to hear examples or experiences that you have with how your hand involvement is impacting your daily life, your quality of life. We have two hands here. We'll go start with the gentleman. Yes.
Yeah, I'm Richard Cole. And I have CMT type 2A. It was diagnosed while I was in the Navy. I was in the Navy for 20 years. And I was facing discharge at 17 years, and I wanted to at least be on to 20 years so I could retire, which my command is the executive officer, commanding officer. They pushed for me to stay on and be waived for the run portion of our annual physical readiness testing. Now, this was all because of the legs at that point, and it wasn't until actually fairly recently when my hands started to become affected. Now I had worked for 14 years actually with a disability insurance company after I was discharged. I left the Navy. And I had a great boss, and she, through the years, allowed or tied me into different types of accommodations at work, you know, until the point where I was using voice-activated software, and that is not wholly effective in doing the job where I was writing all the time. That was my work. So ultimately, because of fatigue and especially hand issues, pain, but inability to do fine manipulation and do the keyboarding, etc., I ultimately had to leave my work, and I loved my work, just like I loved being in the military. So those were major hits for me. So, you know, that was just part of the whole progression, eventually the hands, and that's, I think, still one of the major concerns for me, because we express ourselves in many ways through our hands, and we do work and a lot of stuff that legs are important, but the hands ultimately, I think, are more so.
That was very helpful. Thank you very much, Richard. I think we had a hand at the table behind, right here.
Hi, my name is Linda Canor, and I was diagnosed with CMT1B by Dr. Shai about 15 years ago. And what first started as, you know, just some lower extremity muscle weakness turned into, you know, a host of issues. Most recently, my hands. About 5 or 6 years ago, lost the ability to drive with my feet. Went through the tenuous, procedure of learning to drive with hand controls, which is pretty scary. A lot of anxiety over it. Are they going to work? But I'm here to tell you that I'm doing it, and I try and keep a positive attitude about these kind of things. I also have been diagnosed with Addis pupil, which is, you know, the least of my issues. Addis pupil, what that does is your pupil does not dilate when you're going into a dark environment. So when you're going into maybe a movie theater, most people are ambulating at a good pace, but I, have to stop and get the adjustment going there. The other thing that's happened is hearing loss. We used to think my dad was also had CMT, although never diagnosed. My sister has it also. The hearing loss we attributed to my dad had hearing loss, and he worked for an airline, and we always thought that was the cause, but that really was not the cause. So the hearing loss, really interferes with your performance on your job. I still do work a full-time job. It interferes when you're out to dinner with people because that background noise is awful. You're in a restaurant and the waitress is asking you, what you want, and you have no clue what she's saying. So, every day is just a journey with this. Every day you wake up with another, is this CMT related? What is this? What's going on with my body? But, one of the things that I think that all of us share in this room is, for a long time hiding it. When people would question me, why am I walking like that? Oh, I hurt my leg. I don't do that anymore. I'm not embarrassed by it. And I think the more that you feel comfortable saying, I didn't do this. I was born with this. And I have to go through this. And it makes us stronger. It definitely makes us stronger people. And I think that, keeping that positive attitude every day. And, what I have to say to the younger people that are affected with this is that get educated. Become something. Don't give up, because you have to have a career in this. You have to have a career where you don't need your mobility. Think about that before you get into something that 10 years down the road you're not going to be able to do. So just keep pushing, and someday there will be a drug for us, or therapies for us, and we just have to continue to pray for that.
Great. Thank you very much. We'll just, if we can go right here.
Yeah, my name is Ayo. I have CMT1A. The motor, with regards to the motor and fine movement, for me, it mostly affected my ability to play video games. I can't hold traditional controllers very well all the time. I found out through the modding community, there's actually a bunch of just different controllers people like anyway, and some of those work better for me. Another thing is, there's actually a console that came out 2 years ago, and I wanted to buy it, but the controllers are tiny, so I was like, I'll never be able to play it. And there's a game coming out on my birthday, which I really want, so I'm gonna buy it anyway, and I'm gonna just figure it out. So, good luck to me. And if I can I segue into the standing part so I don't have to raise my hand again?
Yeah, but on the controller part, is it the strength to grip it? Is it the coordination of, and agility of your fingers?
A huge combination of things. Like the clawing aspect of my hands, it forces me to grip the controller really tightly.
Okay.
And then I can't reach certain buttons. And then at the same time, just the dexterity of hitting all those different small buttons, I can't just do that. So it's really a combination of things.
Okay. Yeah, and feel free to add the mobility piece.
And the standing part, this actually goes both with the dexterity and standing. When I go to bars with friends, it's amazing how often you stand to drink a beer. And that's really difficult. And then at the same time, eating wings and pretzels and carrots and all those other things, it's kind of hard to pick them up, especially when they're wet and slippery and greasy. And then you don't want to be fumbling them into other people's food. It's terrible, but delicious, so I still do it anyway.
Yeah, you and Lorenzo both, yeah. Great, yeah, thank you. Yeah, so now I think we're at a point where, I've hit on some of those things that weren't as mentioned quite as much. Do we have any comments from the web to add to this?
All right, we've got a couple of viewers online. I'm going to share their stories. One viewer who's had over 20 surgeries has had to give up driving, which is something that was mentioned earlier, a big part of her story. It's caused her to have to move back home with her aging parents. And she says, imagine wanting to go to a movie, but living in a location without accessible transportation like Uber or Lyft. Trust me, we CMTers live there every day. My dad currently drives me 100 miles a day, both ways, to and from work. Due to fatigue, my mom is doing everything for me at home. I'm jumping through hoops to keep my life normal. I have to keep working full-time and have found there are no outlets to help me with the process and cost of driving again. Insurance companies are setting up roadblocks as I am now required to get a power chair to move toward my driving goal. However, that was denied, and I'm doing an automatic appeal now. Bringing awareness to CMT and how we struggle to keep a normal life is important, not only in the medical field, but in the day-to-day life, to which cannot be underestimated. Another viewer writes, some stories, while equally tragic, can be rewarding. My tear ducts are really overworked today with so many memories, so many of the same memories. For me, each obstacle presented was overcome and or bypassed to pursue all that I desired. I learned early that I would not be the fastest or the strongest, but I would participate. I was able to be part of a 40-year productive career in 50 countries globally. I would not change my life and experiences. I'm currently non-ambulatory, however, self-sufficient and relatively happy.
Thank you. So now I'd like to broaden it to anything, any symptom or health effect of your CMT or inherited neuropathy that most burdens your daily life. Of course, adding to the table here, we've heard about foot deformities, we've heard about issues with ankle weakness, balance, impacts on mobility. So certainly we want to hear any specific examples or ways that you can describe how those impacts are most debilitating for you or having the greatest negative impact on your life. So we'll start in the back.
Hi. Hi. I'm publicly known as Helena the Mermaid. I have CMT 1A. I think the thing that messes with me the most is not feeling my feet sometimes, trying to get into a monofit. And balance for the most part. I swim mostly as therapy and to bring joy to children like me. I'm not used to public speaking. I'm sorry, guys.
So you said that not being able to feel your feet sometimes. How often does that happen?
Quite often.
Like at least once a day?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in addition to getting into the outfit, are there other aspects of your life that are limited by that symptom?
Well, I have a lot of difficulty walking because of it. Like, I feel like I could walk, but with the feet and the balance, it's just really hard.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Well, thank you very much. I was going to say Ariel, but apparently it's Helena, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, I mean, Disney would sue me.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
So.
Well, thank you for swimming your way over here today. Yep, so we have a hand right here.
I used to work in Israel in hospitals, and I'm sorry, getting emotional.
It's okay.
And in those days, they had the old British hospitals with the long wards. And I was a social worker. And I started to have really problems with the walking and the foot drop and all that. So, I don't know if you know Israelis, but they're pretty aggressive. And one of the doctors kind of pushed me up against the wall and said, if you continue like this is before they knew about what they know now, you're going to end up bedridden in 5 years. So that started a whole string of events, and I was thinking about the man up here who was talking at the end, because I was in my 40s. I had started with the foot drop at 35, but didn't know what it was. So I had to figure out what could I do. So I decided that if worse came to worse, I could teach in a wheelchair, because I'd always been good academically. But when I tried to apply for a doctoral degree in Israel, and I'd been supervising there at the universities, their students, Middle East, very traditional, patriarchal at the time. And they said to me, well, go home and take care of your children. And I had been supervising for like 3 universities. So I applied to the States and I got into a doctoral program here. But then my husband and my family had a terrible time with the issue that I would have to come to the States. It would disrupt the family, etc. And I ended up in Texas, but the marriage didn't last. And it was all because of this chain of events. I got my doctorate, and now when I teach, I tell the students on the first day of class, because I went down once. The students were horrified. This is western rural Kansas. You know, you have to be self-sufficient. So I kind of bounced off the floor, and now on the first day of class, I tell the students, if I look a little off balance, it's not because I've been drinking. And they all identify with that. Now that I'm getting older, though I've noticed I'm older than all the faculty in my department, I compensated through using my mind to deal with the CMT. Once in a while, my foot, don't tell any cop. I don't feel the bottoms of my feet, and so once in a while my foot gets, I think I'm on the brake, but I'm still on the gas. Of course, in a small rural town, nobody cares. So, you know, but I did go to my neurologist who is left town and said to him, how do I distinguish between what is aging and what is CMT? I have CMT-X. And he looked at me, he was from the Philippines, and he looked at me and he said, don't worry about it. So I'm trying to prepare for retirement, old age, all of this. But the people who are really having a problem with this are my sons. My oldest son has CMT and lives in Israel. And I went to him one time, and I noticed my sons, when we went through the family breakup and everything, they got very upset with me, still patriarchal. And I had that discussion with my son. We met in a restaurant, and I said, I can tell, are you mad at me because you think you got the CMT from me? That was a critical moment. Yeah, it takes a lot of courage, I think. He said yes. And then we had to communicate. If if I wasn't a social worker, I really don't know if I could have had that discussion. You know, after a while, you live your work. But, and he's going through it, and we think my granddaughter, we're pretty sure, my granddaughter has it in Israel. I came today for him and for her. But my sons are having a problem because I'm aging. My youngest son wants nothing to do with it. You know, like if I fall on one of them. So I worry about the aging and I worry about the CMT. And to tell you the truth, I haven't read anything on aging and CMT. And I think that's a major lack. I think the doctors are focused on symptoms, but they're not looking at a lifespan approach. So that's all I have to say.
Oh, thank you very much. So I think that's actually, with the remaining time we have for this session, a good transition to introduce the final question, which is, what is it that really worries you the most about your future of living with CMT or other inherited neuropathy? And so certainly if you still have experiences that you want to share with a particular symptom, we want to hear that. But I also want to make sure that we cover this question of what is it that worries you most? Yeah.
I mean, right when you said that, for me, you know, it is the pulmonary that, we live in Michigan, and we were in a year's worth of hospitals, and not one doctor mentioned CMT related to pulmonary issues. I'm an intelligent person. I have a master's degree. I didn't know that there was a correlation. I Googled it. There was nothing. So that, for me personally, the unknown. But I also want to quickly say that the generational, you know, if you would have asked me what my biggest worry would have been in December, it would have been how I'm going to take care of my mom with my hands. And I think that that is also something that needs to be addressed. It's like people, your primary caregivers, primarily, if you're lucky and fortunate, are your family. And my mom and I fought all the time because I would go into the bathroom stall and I'd be trying to use, she was very innovative. She had loops on her pants, but still at the end, she couldn't grab the loops as easily. So she'd have me, trying to pull up her pants. And it was, it's a mixture of feelings. It's the feeling of, oh my God, I don't want to be like you. And the guilt of feeling like I don't want to be like you. And also like, what if this happens to me? So I think it's the unknown.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. Hand here.
Thank you. So for me, I think about the issues of having a lasting, meaningful relationship in my life. I know this number of people have touched on this in some way or another. But it's been a long struggle. I've had relationships, well, there's been many short-term relationships, but some of the ones that I, in particular, that I'm thinking about that there seemed to be a lot there, strong connection, love, all that. But ultimately, they were destroyed by the burden, I guess if you want to call it that, perhaps they would use that term, that it presented on my partner. So I'm still in the single scene doing online dating, which presents challenges for anybody, but if you have a condition like CMT, that in my case mostly affects my ability to walk, my legs, and you get shut down a lot. And some people hiding behind this internet thing, they can be pretty nasty and rude about it, which I don't get, and it seems to be getting worse that way. So for me, and looking down, because I'm always thinking about, and I hate the fact that I'm always thinking about where I was and my ability to do whatever, 5 years, 10 years ago, and then, God, what am I going to be like those increments of time down the road. And I try to push those kinds of thoughts aside. But for those who I want in my life, somebody in my life for the long term, you know, I think, God, how's, you know, in the moment, you know, I'm like struggling to get from bedroom to bathroom, and, you know, do I use my scooter or do I use a stick or whatever, you know, all these little micro decisions. And I think, God, who's going to want to put up with this shit? You know, and I'm like, well, other people obviously have it worse off than I do in any respect. CMT, whatever disease, get out of it, you know, remove those thoughts from my mind. So to wrap that up, I just want to say that maybe there's a lapse too there in terms of, you know, what we can do to deal with that issue, or I don't know. It's perplexing, and it's frustrating, and at times very depressing.
Yeah.
So
thank you very much for sharing that. So I think we have time for one or two more comments before our break. So we've got a hand here, and do we have anyone want to take that? All right, then this will be our last comment.
All right, real fast. Okay. One of the things I'm concerned about, well, my daughter's not concerned, I'm excited, but she's going to be having twins in a month. And, you know, being able to be there to help her and whatever, snap this or that, I'm just figuring the kids are going to go around without anything on the bottom. So, but, you know, that's, you know, concern. And then the other thing is that, you know, like, again, I think a lot of people said the same thing, like, for me, you know, with the hands, you know, when you go to the gas station, you're like, hope you could put this car through fast enough, and, you know, as people, you know, finding ways to adapt and constantly thinking of how you can be independent. And I just have to share something, because for other people may not have thought of this. I'm very excited about this. But so I put these rings on my wallet on here, and it's so exciting because I can now open it up. And then the other thing is, like, I'm trying to figure out a wallet to help it. I'm sorry, I just have to show this because to me, I'm very excited. Like when you get your credit card, I found out a way to, like, being able to pull something out like this, so I don't have to use my teeth. And, you know, and then I just have, like, systems that I'm just constantly coming up with. So these are very exciting. I put them on my boots. It's the independence is incredible. So just wanted to share that. Okay.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And, you know, there's going to be, I'm glad that you are excited about something. And in fact, our whole after lunch session is going to be all about all the different things that this community does to try to live with and manage living with the disease. I think we have our one last comment, and then we're going to break.
I'm Ellen Cohen, and I am a wife of a CMT patient, and he was late onset, so we had no idea when we got married 25 years ago that this was going to be in our life. But I was thinking about the issue of relationships, and when my husband was first diagnosed, we went for a walk, and I said, I will not leave you because you are unable to walk. But I know disease makes you angry. And if I find that you can't deal with your anger except by taking it out on me, I will leave. I think one of the things that's not addressed enough in chronic health issues, I'm a kidney patient. I had a transplant 2.5 years ago. Chronic diseases exist in relationships. I get frustrated when my husband apologizes for things that I know he doesn't have any control over. I think sometimes I feel he doesn't understand how much every day I feel his illness. And I feel aware of the things we dreamed about doing. We were going to hike Mount Katahdin. We were going to have a very active retirement. And just when we got free to do that, his disease kicked in, and all of that goes away. You have to find a way to work together to deal with the anger, to deal with the disappointment, to deal with the dreams that have to change. But sometimes what's happening in a relationship is that, in fact, the disease is being allowed to pull you apart, and it just can't do that. So that's all I want to say.
Very important perspective.